117亿手上进驻啊，边仔就是高铁站甲台铁站。
In Taiwan, election time is loud and vibrant. For weeks, all corners of the island have erupted in a festival of democracy.
国家，我们希望保有我们自己的自由民主，这样子。
我最不满意的就是把我们人民生命财产当作不一回事，
就是要让我们国会过半。
Despite Taiwan's tiny size, this poll could have enormous consequences for the region.
Beijing will be watching this election very closely.
China considers Taiwan part of its territory and it hasn't ruled out seizing the island by force. Since 2016, when current President Tsai was elected, China has cut off official communications with Taiwan's government.
China has been trying to influence Taiwan's election, ever since Taiwan's first presidential election in 1996.
Hoping to succeed Tsai Ing-wen is the current Vice President Lai Ching-te, also known as William Lai. If successful, their Democratic Progressive Party, or DPP, would be the first to ever win a third consecutive term in Taiwan's nearly 3 decades of democracy.
The ruling party, DPP, is generally seen as a more Taiwanese nationalist party. It's more likely to see China as a security risk to be managed.
The main opposition party, the Kuomintang or KMT, favours closer relations with Beijing. Their presidential candidate is former police chief and current new Taipei mayor Hou Yu-ih.
Deterrence is the priority. What we need to do is buy time, right, to increase our military capability for deterrence.
Even if the KMT wins the presidency, I wouldn't say it means that Taiwanese people want to be unified with China.
The KMT isn't advocating for so-called reunification, but they stress that if they're in charge, at least Beijing will pick up the phone. They want to strengthen ties with China and encourage further trade across the strait.
对大陆的任何意图，我从来没有存在不切实际的想法。我很务实、很稳健的去看待大陆，在看待大陆。 提升自我防卫能力，让对方不敢轻易发动战争。
Meanwhile, both candidates for the DPP are despised by China. The vice presidential candidate, Xiaobi-Kim, has been sanctioned by Beijing twice after encouraging the current president's high-profile visit to the United States last year. In the face of growing aggression, the current government has looked to other parts of the world to strengthen relationships and boost trade. Xiaobi-Kim was until recently the island's de facto ambassador to the US.
If elected, what support would your government expect from Australia in the event of military conflict with China?
我在华府期间也有机会偶尔跟澳大利亚来的访客有一些互动跟讨论。跟澳大利亚我们还有很多可以发展的空间。 那当然，我们也注意到美国总统拜登跟澳大利亚总理在高峰会的过程当中也特别注集两岸关系的和平稳定是全球繁荣不可或缺的一部分。
Despite the overwhelming shadow of China, there are other issues galvanising voters at this election.
We've seen a lot of discussion on issues ranging from high housing prices, the state of the economy, to wage growth, to ensuring that our families are better taken care of.
Nuclear energy is one of the biggest topics. Education is very important. Housing prices.
To combat the low birth rate, the KMT is even offering the equivalent of 50,000 Australian dollars to families that have more children.
If you have a third child, you'll get a 1 million NT dollar reimbursement.
The enthusiasm for politics and democracy more broadly here is quite remarkable to observe, but you can see there's a real lack of young people among the crowd, and that highlights a problem that Taiwan's political parties have to grapple with. the younger generation, their turnout rate tends to be lower than the older generation, and so how effective or how impactful they are on election day really is contingent on whether they get out of their door and vote or not.
Historically, Taiwan's presidential elections have been a choice between the DPP and the KMT. But this time there's a popular third candidate, Ko Wen-je, the former mayor of Taipei, who appeals particularly to young Taiwanese.
You have a new upstart third party, TPP. It's new, it tried to not play the old game on China policy, so TPP is more about capturing domestic level dissent and grievances.
Many of our young people here in Taiwan are facing similar difficulties as young people in other developed democracies around the world, which is that you do see stagnant wage growth, particularly in the service sector. You do see higher housing prices. You do see the cost of living continue to increase.
Last year, Taiwan's two opposition parties toyed with the idea of forming a coalition, posing a real threat to the ruling party. But the alliance fell apart in spectacular fashion when the candidates started bickering publicly at a press briefing broadcast live on YouTube. There's a legally mandated polling blackout in Taiwan in the days leading up to the election, but most agree it will be close.
我最介意的是我的下一代。
最重要，一定要让台湾主权独立。